Welcome back, everybody. We are here this week with Coach Stephen, who leads the esports program and also is in our communications office here at Catholic Central. How are you?
What's up, guys? How are you guys?
Good. So I want to kick it off. I want to talk about, you're a CC alum. You came back immediately, basically, after you graduated college, because you just couldn't be away from CC for so long, right? But what drew you back to CC?
Yeah, I actually came back before I graduated college.
Okay.
So I came back right around before the pandemic in October, just to say hi to some faculty and staff. And at the time I was at U of M Dearborn, so I think this might have been sophomore year. I can't remember if it's sophomore or freshman year. But I was doing esports, playing like for fun kind of thing. And I kind of actually got a little bit more into it than just fun. I was playing Fortnite at a pretty decent level. Started some esports, like not a club, but like a team outside of the school. And I was having a lot of fun with it, but it was a lot of hard work. So I came back to the school and I was just talking with teachers. And a teacher I was really close with here was Mrs. Levins. We just started talking. She was like, hey, I saw you doing something with esports. Could you talk to me a little bit about it? We went ahead and I started talking. She's like, that's really cool. Like, do you want to start a gaming club here? And like my initial reaction in the back of my head was like, that's offensive. No, I was like, that sounds terrible. Oh yeah. Because like I'm in college, right? So like I'm like, do I really want to come back here and moderate a gaming club with a bunch of high schoolers? And my initial, like that was my initial reaction, right?
What could go wrong?
Yeah. I don't know if that's like the right thing to say or not, but that's definitely a thought I had. So that was kind of the initial thing. But, obviously I wanted to be respectful, and she's like, well, could you at least come to a couple meetings and help us get something off the ground? And that was like a no-brainer. Like, I could come back and help. So that kind of just went on, like, how things happen here, right? Someone has an idea, it goes by slowly. Eventually, we got into contact with Mr. Carrier, who I was close with. I was here and did a bunch of things for Drive, and, I was really close with Mike. And we just kind of started emailing back and forth. Eventually, they invited me in to do like just like a quick meeting about what we could do with video games. And it was kind of funny because our Drive theme for my senior year was video games. So it's kind of like full circle.
It came back.
That is full circle.
Yeah. And at the meeting, I show up and you've got the school administration in the boardroom. And I was like, oh. I was like, all right, this is serious. I was like, this is something different, all right? And Mr. Babbitts is actually, I got to give him credit to it. He was really the one that pushed for an esports team, a varsity esports team. So he threw that idea out there, which is like, well, hey guys, if we're going to do this, let's do this right and let's blow it out. And well, Stephen, we'll hire you in as the coach. And how about that? We'll pay you to run the high school esports team. And I was just like, it's like, what is going on right now?
And I'm just trying to focus on like going to college right now.
And I had a job and I was making, my sister's a pharmacist. So I was working with her in Plymouth. And I was 18 years old, 19 years old, making $20 an hour doing pharmacy tech. And this is like a few years ago. So I was chilling. I was like, all right, I'm making some money.
You're hanging out.
But at the same time, I was also like, dang, I really don't want to be counting pills for the rest of my life. Like, it just didn't seem like it wasn't a good fit for me.
Yeah. What were you studying at college?
Yeah, so I got my bachelor's degree in business.
Okay.
So BBA, and then my my major is digital marketing.
Okay.
So that kind of makes sense with what I do here at the school during the day.
Yeah.
But I kind of took a leap, and I went, okay, I could be making some pretty decent money. My check was pretty good at the pharmacy. I was working 20 hours a week, $20 an hour. It's $400 a week. It was pretty decent. I was like, all right, I'm doing pretty well. Yeah. But I could kind of make a decision, and Babbitts came through and then was kind of like, hey, here's how much we can pay you. I did the math in my own head. I was like, all right, I'm gonna take a pretty big pay cut to come coach esports, but I'll be able. Like, I'm in college, right? What do I need the money for? Right. So I decided to do that. So I decided to come back and start the esports program here. So that's how it all got started. It was really organic, and it wasn't something where, I think I remember telling kids when I graduated, I was like, I won't be back at that place. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure that was like my exact words to one of my best friends was like, we're not going back here. Yeah.
So esports isn't like football or basketball.
like where like coaches are like running drills and making sure like practice like every week. So like, how do you go through like coaching esports?
Yeah, I mean, I don't love the term head coach of esports, but I understand why it's that way, especially at high school with athletics, because it just makes sense. You have your athletic director, then you have the coach of the program, and I guess in the term, I guess you could say I do some coaching sometimes, but really it's not like, yeah, and they're laughing because they're on the esports team, so they know it's like when there's a top 500 Overwatch player on my team, what on earth could I possibly tell him that he doesn't already know, right? Maybe, you know, being a little bit older, I can give him some tips to like stay calm and like chill, but like other than that, there's really not much like technically I can tell them. And that might be true for some of the other sports, but I'd like to just think of it as like a general manager or a director of a program or something of that nature, where you're scheduling games, you're picking teams, you're kind of putting putting procedures into place, but you're actually letting the kids run their teams. And I think it's kind of powerful too, you know, naming a captain, telling that person, hey, you're going to kind of be in charge of the in-game leading, like what's going on in the game. And then obviously, you know, I'm not necessarily bad at video games, so like I can give some tips, right? But I'm not going to be able to be like...
Give it all, you know?
Yeah, I won't be able to tell you what's the new meta in Overwatch because I'm not playing at that high of a level. So there's no point for me to input stuff like that, if that makes sense.
So making students their own leaders, basically, of their program.
Yeah.
And kind of putting them in control of their destiny.
I'd like to think so. I think that's what's my like vision of it, right? Is because for me it makes sense where if we wanted to do this at like the real high level, here's what we do, right? It's you never heard someone hire in a sports coach, right? That sounds weird.
Yeah.
Never.
So like hiring an esports coach is weird because there's a bunch of different game titles which are their own thing. A good Rocket League player is not a good Overwatch player, and vice versa. So like at a high level, you'd want a coach for each team, right? Like that's what you'd want. But like I get it, at a high school, are you going to hire in 5 different video game coaches? Does it make sense financially? You know, is it that big of high stakes? So I think making leaders out of the guys is the best thing that we can do.
What helped you decide what type of games you want to like choose?
Yeah, that's a question I get all the time, and people always want to add Siege or
Clash Royale.
Your class.
Minecraft, any
Minecraft. Oh.
you name it, I've heard. You know,
Speed runs.
speed runs, everything. And to my point of view, there's something there where like I almost want to have this club or intramural for esports, or like this kind of recreational part for kids who just want to come and play video games, have some fun. I think it's cool. On the esports side of things, like the competition, I want us to play against other high schools. I want it to be competitive. I want it to feel kind of like a traditional sport in that sense. So I actually let the leagues dictate what we're going to play, right? Okay. So if Michigan High School Esports League wants to play X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3, 4, those are the games that I'll choose, and I'll form teams around that. Now, sometimes the leagues offer games that even I don't really, I don't know if that, I don't see a great fit here. I know one of the games we could be playing is Mario Kart. But a lot of the guys play it for fun, to be honest. I'm just is there the interest there for the competitive players? Because my goal for some of the guys, and this year is better than any other year, is for them to get scholarships. I think it's
because you have the varsity jacket implementing as well, right?
Yeah, so this will be our first season of that too. It's something I could have done from the get-go, but my thing was with it was if I was driving from Dearborn and I wasn't all in, right? I was in college, I was coaching, so I felt like I wasn't all in. I didn't think it was fair for me to start writing varsity letters and make things. This year came up with a criteria with what I think is fair, what I think is you earning a letter, and kind of pushed it out. So it'll be interesting to see when that time comes around. I'm guessing we'll get to a point where we'll start doing some banquets and
That'd be nice.
some team unity things soon.
Yeah. So how do you go about getting maybe if there's a student right now that's watching this, or if there's a student that comes to your office and says, hey, I don't really understand, because I tried to play Rocket League a couple weeks ago, and it was like appalling how bad I was at video games, right? being an 18-year-old guy, right? But how do you go about coaching somebody into that place of because if you want to be a swimmer, or if you want to play baseball or whatever, you can start at a low level and not really have much understanding of the game and eventually get to that point. Is there the same opportunities in esports and through the program?
Yeah, I think you take kids where they come to you at, right? If they come to you and they're most of the games have ranking systems, right? And bronze is like for the majority of games is like bottom level players, right? And this is actually a question I get a lot with incoming students, right? Like, oh, I want to play esports, or okay, I'm playing video games, but I'm not playing those games. What happens if I come in? Like, what exactly happens? And the number one thing I always tell people for that is like, for video games, there's a certain point where there's nothing I can do to help you in the first X amount of hours. Let's say it's 200, let's say it's 500. I don't know what that number is for each game and for each person, but for those set number of hours, you have to be playing the game and just getting repetitive, learning, learning maps, learning game mechanics, learning things like that. And I can try to help like progress that maybe and be like, okay, well, here's a tip I did to try to learn these things. But at the end of the day, it's almost like learning a football playbook or, something like that.
Yeah.
You have to learn the playbook before any coaching tip would ever help.
Like, I could struggle to hit the ball, right,
Sure,
with my car.
right.
And that's I was basically doing circles, right, and power-ups and stuff
well,
like that, right, the entire time.
Something that I found though is like, because I'll play esports and I like the game, is that just playing with friends and just having a bunch of hours definitely helps, because you understand the game once you get like more than 50 to like 100 hours, because you start going and you.
So, what do you say to parents? So, I know Northwood University has a fantastic, no, genuinely, because Northwood University has a fantastic, they're world-renowned esports program. They're offering scholarships up the wazoo, right? Like, what do you say to parents that are like, I'm not going to let my son play video games because this is just rotting his brain or whatever, because now there's a pathway for these students that...
I get it, and I'm totally with it on both sides. I was a traditional athlete. I was a really good student. I find balance in life, right? So like when a parent asks me that, I don't take it and be like, oh, like that's really offensive or whatnot. It's more like that, dude, that's a genuine question. Is my son gonna get addicted? Is he gonna forget about everything else? Obviously, like we're mind, body, spirit, right? It's like all three things. So like I try to always explain to them this. All right, is your son already playing the game? Yeah, he's already playing. He's already playing for X amount of hours. Is he playing with friends? Yeah, he's playing with friends, but they play in the basement, or he plays home alone and then they play online or something. Okay, cool. Is he going to play traditional sports? Is he going to get involved at the school? Nah, he probably is not someone who's going to get involved. Okay, if he likes esports and it's something that would get him involved with other humans, right, like contact, and like something where you can grow and it's a skill, and you're managing your time, you're finishing your studies, and on top of it, I'm a big proponent of you're working out, you're doing things to make yourself feel good.
We did
then
that training. Right?
Yeah, I don't see that.
It's re-implemented.
So
Esports Workouts.
Our first, like one of our first years, as Mr. Babbitts and I was like, hey, maybe we can meet with Coach Range and try to like get like an esports workout going or something. And like it was like one of those things where like I was like, you know what? It's kind of optional, but it's there if you guys want it. Go ahead and utilize it if you want. And I think that's good for all students, not just for the esports players. But yeah, and then I basically, tell the parents, hey, so here are all your concerns. Here's why maybe you shouldn't be so concerned. And then here are the benefits for it, right? Here's the team building aspect. Here's something that your son is actually like kind of like pouring into a little bit and trying to express himself in, and like he's good at it. So like why would you want to take that away? That part doesn't completely, I actually don't get too much backlash from it anymore. I thought it would be a lot harder to convince parents, but a lot of them are on board, and like especially young parents. I had a father come tell me, he's like, dude, this is so cool that high school is doing it, because we used to do LAN parties and we had to bring all of our equipment to like, this is like a 35-year-old, 40-year-old dad that was telling me this, and he was like, oh, this is awesome. He's like, my son's definitely going to do that. So I was like I just thought it was awesome.
Yeah.
So one thing I had a question on was like, not that long ago we had the big Esports ASSEMBLY.
Right.
And can you tell us a little bit about like how that happened? Like I know we had like the wrestling assemblies, but like I don't think I've never seen like an esports one happen before.
First in the country.
That was so
hyped.
that was like hyped than most other assemblies.
And like,
I would have to argue.
How did you like develop that vibe too? Because like that, just
that set the
entire thing
mood,
was so
really.
special. It did. And it set the mood for the year too.
It was on Sports Center.
And wasn't that also the first assembly of the year? As well?
I don't think it
No,
was
not the first. We had fall sports.
Fall sports and then,
But it set the mood.
It did set the
how
standard.
would go.
We actually, I mentioned this to Mr. Babbitts, but I actually felt that right after that esports assembly, there was a dramatic shift in the amount of people showing up to stuff. There was, we had a really good run where it was esports assembly, it was Brother Rice hockey game, and people were on break, and then we had a wrestling assembly, and then basketball turnout's been great. So it's like it felt like it's kind of pushed a little bit into that spirit. But yeah, it was one of those things where actually me and Mr. Sova, who is in the communications office with us, and other people too, were like kind of talking about what if we do something cool with esports, and we've got that cool scoreboard outside. How funny it would be if we just set up 2 kids playing Smash on 100 feet scoreboard. Like, and we set them in the middle of the field. And I think I told that to Mr. Babbitts. Mr. Babbitts was like, that's awesome. Why don't we should do an assembly match too. Like, get in front of the whole student body. I was like, dude, assembly match. I was like, yeah, that's awesome. Could we do that? So I started asking around, and I mean, that was one of those things where it was not on the school calendar to start the year. And a little persistence and a little bit of luck, and the administration finally, agreed to it. Finally agreed to it, and I probably with a little bit of caution, right? Yep. And I think it turned out really good. I think it was a great day to do it, and I mean, all the props goes to like the student body, right? Like, all right, the stage was cool, the computers are cool, the game was cool. We invited an opponent that we had a good success against, which was all fun and contributed.
Do they
the
want
kids
to come back?
Bought in. I think us doing that, and with the success it had, I think they would come back, and I think anyone else that I ask now will come back. Because when I first asked schools, right? Actually, this was the exact response from Dakota. Didn't we play you guys earlier on in the year? Yeah. What was the score? 3-0. You guys lost. Okay, why would we want to come back to your school and play again?
Yeah.
And that was the initial response, but eventually, and credit to the Dakota coach, he asked his kids, and the kids went, "Oh, we got better. We want a rematch against them." So that they accepted it, and a lot of schools probably wouldn't have. So it's like one of those things where now that's the example for other people to do it.
And honestly, we've kind of set the standard too, I think, for how schools look at esports, and especially now on like a national stage, because we had that video on Sports Center. I don't know if it was on ESPN. It was Rocket League. It was Rocket League posted, like it was everywhere, right? And so I think there's gonna be a lineup for next year. People asking.
I heard pro league players want to come back.
So do they like when you're matchmaking against other teams? Is it like challenging? Like I challenge you to.
So
how does that work?
There's some of that in our new league, which I really love. So this is the normal rundown of a season, right? We've got our fall and spring season. The games are essentially the same throughout both seasons. Rocket League and Smash, we've been playing all year round for the 4 years I've been here. It's like the 2 most popular games, and they're really easy to set up matches. But you get 8 games, so it's 8 weeks of regular season, 1 game a week. In week 3, they have something called your Rivals Week, which is I challenge your school and you challenge my school. We accept it. We set it up. That part is really fun. I really love setting up schedules like that. I also love that they basically do a Swiss format for the league, which basically means if you won your game, week 1, you're going to play against a team that also won week 1. And then that's going to keep on going throughout the year. So if you lost game 1, you're going to, play against another team that lost game 1. By the time you get to games 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the final stretch towards playoffs, you're actually playing against competition that's just as good as you. So it really weeds out, when you do a league like this and you don't have divisions like MHSAA and you've got 200 teams in one pool, it's really hard to determine skill, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing that's kind of how they set it up.
So is it like a bracket system almost?
Essentially, if you want to look at it, it's like a really large bracket with one pool, right? Okay. And then the teams that make the top of the pool, usually it's top 64, top 32, top 16, depending on how many teams entered, that's who goes into state playoffs.
Okay. So you spoke a little on MSHAA. So I know like Rocket League, like the esports team is one of few like state champions. Like, what was it like getting to that first like state championship? Like taking like a new team, like of like kids, like a new, like it's a new sport. Like
sure.
It's like it's really exploding all over the country and taking them to their first state championship.
Yeah, the first one was all online during COVID. Yeah. So I actually never even. I met the kids a few times, like meetings and stuff. And then we just talked over Discord for about 6 months. And LTU ran, which, it's kind of questionable. And okay, what's a state title, what's not, right? LTU ran a state tournament hosted by State Champs, the network. And it was a Rocket League tournament. We actually played Divine Child in the finals. And that's how we won our first, quote-unquote, state championship, and I wasn't even. I was just on the headset with the guys at home and just trying to complete it. And I remember seeing that on the news, and I was like, all right, that's pretty interesting. It was kind of one of those things where it's almost like you don't really understand what you're doing in the moment. You're like, I don't really, like, we're just playing games, right? And, like, moving on. And then you look back and you're like, wow, like, we were really setting the standard for a lot of other schools to come in and compete. And, like, I remember, I think the first 3 years, I think we won Rocket League at least once a year. And, like, you can win 2 a year, basically, because there's a fall and spring season. So we were at least winning, like, 1 every 6 months, like a state championship in a game. I remember the first time we lost in Rocket League, and I was like, oh, that doesn't feel good. Like, I was like, I don't know what this feels like. I was like, I don't like that. But that was a good thing. That was a testament to other schools coming on board. Maybe the competition in the first few years, the first couple of years, especially during COVID, was a little bit easier. Kids weren't taking it seriously. But from the get-go, we just kind of made that our plan, which is like, we want kids who legitimately want to practice the games and compete for titles, compete for scholarships.
So what moment did you realize, like this idea that came from a Miss Levin's conversation is now just, like, huge? Like, it's actually, like, coming together. I don't think we're there yet, to be honest with you. I know we've had success with, like, the state championships, and we've done good with all of our teams, and now we've had this highlight video that showcased a really awesome esports event that we held. But I think I almost see it like robotics, right? That STEM building is here because of the robotics team, and the robotics team was, started before my time, right? So it's like, I'm not going to get to see what this becomes, probably. It'll probably be like 25 years, 50 years down the line, where I'll be like, oh, that's what it became at CC,
You
right?
could be like Coach Magny, though, and hang out,
Yeah, you can be like Coach Magny, hang out for 75 years.
Then that center will be named after you, right? So we've talked about your time esports coach at CC. We've talked about how you got back to CC. Something I think some students don't really know a whole lot about is your business, 26 Rising, and what it does. So would you mind kind of sharing that with our students and alumni and faculty?
Yeah, so 26 Rising is almost more of an idea, and company's a good word for it. I mean, it's a passion hobby of mine, and it's something that, like, is not necessarily where I want it to be, especially from a business perspective. We've done a lot of cool things, but haven't necessarily gotten it to what I see it as. So before I came here, I mentioned, like, I started a club. That team was called V8 Esports, and it was me and 60 other guys that I met online that I was basically helping market, schedule games, do esports things for, compete in prizes. And a lot of it was Fortnite, and we had a lot of success winning prize money in Fortnite. And at the time, I mean, Fortnite was pumping like cash. It was like Booga first place was like 4 million or something. And like, we had guys in the Fortnite World Cup, right? So that was cool, but there was a big issue, and I was making $20 an hour, and basically trying to, like, pump it into this not even company, but just this group, this idea, right? And it wasn't something that I was, like, sustainable for me, right? So I came back here, and I always wanted to still have that idea, which was I would want to create Michigan's biggest, or Detroit's biggest, professional esports team. So essentially, it's competing in all the game titles at the highest level, but really try to be focused around a city. And the reason partially for it is because, like, that assembly has kind of something to do with it. I think the future of it is going to be, like, for this to become sustainable, there needs to be sales, there needs to be tickets, there needs to be things, there needs to be events.
Like a basketball game? Almost?
Sort of, yeah. So I would like to see Rocket League matches played in person, even though they can be played online. Or at least a good chunk of them, because the turnout can create revenue, sponsorships, ticket sales, merchandise, et cetera. You got to make it kind of like, and honestly, it kind of reminds me a little bit of basketball. Like, I don't know if you guys know much about how basketball started in the United States, but, like, a lot of times the first games that were, like, hosted with players or with fans and stuff were actually, like, high school assemblies, because people weren't coming to watch basketball. So you have to almost create that interest. But 26 Rising basically started when, and I'll keep names out of it, but basically a CC alumnus and a father of someone who I coached kind of came in and was interested in investing in esports and wanted to see kind of like what we could do with it, right? And I gave him the rundown of esports and how I felt the scene was and the industry and my ideas for, you know, how we would make a company that would actually be profitable and maybe like become huge. And I don't know if, I think at first there's a little hesitancy, which is like, I'm not sure if I'm buying into all this esports stuff. Maybe there's nothing there, maybe there is. But eventually, through the help of him, his brother, and a different CC alumnus, so 3 CC alumni, they gave me $250,000 to start 26 Rising as an investment. And I know like your eyes got big, right? Because it's like, that sounds like a lot of money. And it is a lot of money. At the same time, it's like I've been doing it for 2 years. So you have to like almost do the math, which is like I knew like how much I wanted to like budget each month to like pay players and to travel, to basically send players out to travel and then also produce content and marketing around. So it's kind of budgeted out really tightly. And you know, we've done some cool things. We've been in Rocket League Championship Series, the highest level of Rocket League, top 16 in North America. At one point, I would say we were probably like a top 5 Smash team in the world, which is, it's crazy.
That's
wow.
We were competing against Team Liquid, FaZe, you name like the big dogs. At some point we've played them, which is really funny because it's like that's a 24-year-old from Michigan who's working at his old high school that's competing against the owners are like of FaZe is Jones of the Cowboys, and like there's like multi-conglomerates that own some of the esports teams.
So are these teams, I'm sorry to interrupt you, are these teams good. Like, you know, let's say like the Cleveland Cavaliers or something like that, would that be where you would put a comparable
like
to 26 Rising? How would I kind of, you know, as somebody that doesn't know a ton about esports?
The esports orgs? Yeah. So I think orgs are their own little thing because they really revolve a lot around, because there's not that much money in esports, right? There's no tickets to be sold, like for a lot of these events. So a lot of it is coming from sponsorships through ad revenue, and how they get it is through making content, right? So it's players making videos or players playing the game, live streaming, putting sponsors on it, putting partnerships on it, selling merchandise to the young crowd. You know, I'm sure you've always, like, young kids wearing FaZe gear. It's like not uncommon to see, right? So that's a lot of where the money actually comes from. So a lot of times I actually think of it as, instead of like a sports company, I kind of see it as a media company, if that makes sense. But you could compare it. There's a lot of sports teams that own these esports orgs anyways. And honestly, that's something that makes sense to me, right? Like, for example, Minnesota Vikings owned Version 1 and Minnesota Rocker. So actually, the COD team, Call of Duty team from Minnesota, would just play from the Minnesota Vikings stadium because it's like it's not hard to like convert one of the rooms into like an esports lab. And I think they have the infrastructure for it, right? But it's still so new, so I can't tell you like what it will be. You know, I don't know what the scene's gonna look like. There might be ESPN. There might be someone who comes along and is like, hey, we're going to make a franchised esports league where we compete in X, Y, and Z and we do TV deals on it. Like, someone's going to figure it out. It just hasn't been figured out yet.
It'll take time.
So this is the ground floor type opportunity for you.
This is grassroots esports at a professional level, and it's something that it's like, you're almost like, you're just trying to stay alive until that boom comes.
Are you a management company then for the athletes, or would they be called athletes even, like the gamers that are taking?
You're essentially a.
I'm sorry, I sound like a grandpa. I'm really sorry. I have no, and that's why I love that we're doing this because I'm learning right now kind of a lot about esports and how it plays out. So
essentially, I think that's the best way to explain it is all the athletes that are on your team or the esports players, they have contracts with you, and you can format those just like any other sports program or like any other marketing agency, right? So if you want to pay them a set amount to go travel and play games, but then say, hey, if we trade you or on your next contract, we take 10%. Or on your prize pools, every time you win a tournament, we're taking 30%, 40%, whatever it may be for it to make sense. That's kind of how a lot of these deals work. Now, to be honest with you, it's definitely, it's harder to make money that way than the alternative, which is through brand deals and sponsorships and ad revenue. That's where I would say 50% of the esports money comes from right now, which sounds good, but is actually terrible because
sponsorships are impossible.
Well, the biggest thing is that's other people's money.
Yeah.
You're not making your own money. You're essentially saying, hey, we've got eyes on us and we can sell a product for you, but we can't sell our own product. So that's where the struggle lies right now.
So I don't know if you guys know this, but one of the playoff games from the NFL, I think it was like Chiefs or Dolphins, something, I don't remember. But they did a live stream on Peacock and they made a couple
I know
$1
what
million.
you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think, I know we were talking about like acquiring different sports, right? You don't know if, ESPN will come and say, hey, we should make a sports league. Do you think right now, with the war between like the mainstream like networks and then like ESPN, Peacock, Hulu, do you think we're gonna see something like that where esports gets taken over by one of the mainstream news channels, or either through like ESPN, Rumble, something like that?
It's possible. The big issue with this right now is you need everyone to come together at a round table like this and sing Kumbaya. Because the biggest issue, right, is like you got these games that were created by people, by companies. It's a good thing and a bad thing. The games are not like a sport. Like a sport is not owned by anyone. Soccer is not like really owned. Like, there's FIFA. But anyone could create their own FIFA organization and run it. Here's the issue of Rocket League. Rocket League is intellectual property of Psyonix, intellectual property of Epic Games, who owns them.
I see.
So now you're dealing with legal entities, which is Rocket League can say, I want to run our league this way. We're doing it this way. We've got our own streamers. We've got this, and that. And we don't want to give up that chunk because we want to be in control of the money, right? So for you to create something that would be spectacular for the user experience, you'd need people to come together and say, I'm willing to give you this chunk as long as we're getting that chunk, and kind of hold hands through it.
So why do you think it is that the brands that own these games have not created leagues out of their own thing? Because originally when we were starting to talk, I was thinking, okay, they're Fox, I think it was Fox, and recently created their own football league, right?
Sure.
With ESPN or whatever. There's some collaboration deal. And they created the
UFL.
Yes, exactly, the UFL, right? Why, and I was thinking Peacock could do that same thing with esports, right? It could be, NEL, National Esports League or something.
I got you.
Why don't these brands, though, come together that own the property and say, okay, we see
want
that there are
this.
all these people playing.
Yeah.
Let's get, 15 teams. That's where we're going to start, right? With 15 major cities in the United States. And they came together and they created their own league.
Yeah.
And they sold franchises, to each of these cities. And they allowed them to build their own, esports headquarters.
That's actually that's my idea. That's like when you talk about things like that. That's actually why I started 26 Rising, was to hopefully be one of those 15 teams.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it'll ever happen, and the reason being because Rocket League is just like, we have our Rocket League Championship Series that we own. And also for a lot of the publishers, you got to remember that even though esports is an integral part of their community because it's a player base for them, that's actually not their final customer, right? And 90% of the kids who play Fortnite aren't trying to go pro. Yeah. They're trying to buy skins, and that's your cash cow, right?
Exactly, that's right.
Your Epic Games, that's your cash cow is
Yeah.
microtransactions. If you're Rocket League, it's microtransactions. So that's why you see a lot of these games going freemium, which is free to play, but here's all these cool skins.
Microtransactions that
And really, they just don't care. Like, unless they could figure out a way that the esports they know is going to make money, they would just say, let's just keep it.
They'd be on board.
Yeah.
Now, some companies are nicer than others, right? Dota's one of the biggest ones where it's like Dota takes, I think, 3 or 5% of all the revenue and pumps it back into esports. So that's when you get like a $40 million grand prize for like a first place. But most companies, especially ones that are held by holding companies and stock market, the bottom line. It's profit, right? It's not. They're not trying to build the sport, to be honest.
Right. So could this be comparative to the NFL in the 60s right now, do you think? Prior to...
It's the wild, wild west.
Because, and honestly, that's, I feel like, what the NFL in, the 40s, 50s, and 60s was, because there were so many expansion leagues and additional things popping up, right? And trying to take over the market.
And that's actually how NFL got started, which was these team owners were like, hey, we're a big owner out here in Detroit, or we're a big owner out here in Chicago. 6 guys get together. Yeah. Why don't we collab and start playing each other? Because we'll create our own league. Cut out the middleman. And if teams can do that, and then go to Rocket League and say, hey, we're going to create our own 8-person league, and we're going to build a stadium, and we're going to play in person. I think at that point, Rocket League might be like, hey, we have some interest in having a part of that action. But I don't think they want to do the work, if that makes any sense.
I think
They want you to
other
have all the
people to do
capital,
work.
put
Yeah.
everything up.
Yep.
Yeah,
buy
they
their
want-
franchise
risk
right,
needs to
risk-
be
yeah.
mitigated.
It needs to be
Yeah.
on you, not us.
Yeah.
I feel like that'd be very hard though, because Nintendo. And
Yeah.
I don't know
Honestly-
how Nintendo runs for their esports or like what they have for programs for esports, but I feel like Smash Bros might be a little bit harder to set up than other
100%.
games.
Yeah.
What current like esports? I know we have Overwatch, we have Rocket League, Valorant, Smash.
Yep.
Which esports do you think is doing the best right now?
Out of those, I would
Yeah,
say
those.
Rocket League.
I feel like Rocket League.
Are you saying from a viewer or a player?
Let's do both. Let's do viewer and then actual like player.
I think Rocket League for me has the greatest potential because it's a game that is so easily understandable and transferable to a sport.
Car hit
You
ball.
like
Car,
car
in a
soccer.
basketball, soccer.
Like my dad's 63. He came out to me in New Jersey. We watched the World Championship. My dad fell in love with it. He was like, I understand why people watch this. Like, this is crazy. He's like, this is like fun. Like you could have this on TV. It's fun to watch. So from that perspective, I think that's got a lot of potential. I think the user base right now is a little bit upset that Epic bought it and that there's a lot of like. I think there's some struggles with the community, but I think from a viewer perspective, out of the ones that we play, one of the scenes that I think is doing really well, and it could change too if Overwatch becoming like its own thing again. Like Overwatch League is dead, so now they're gonna create something else.
They're making something else right now, right? Yeah.
So
what were you saying about the Overwatch League?
So Overwatch League actually was this big league that had a really big sponsors and really big view. It really had large viewer base.
It was early like 17s or 18s, I want to say.
But it died. So
Yeah.
they just officially killed it. And now they're going to create something else, which is a little bit more like, hey, anyone can play in this league. It's not franchise based. A lot of the companies adopted a franchise model, which was, hey, your team, you want to play in Chicago? Give us $20 million. We'll let you into the league, right?
Wow.
So that's literally how a lot of these things started. Overwatch did it. They died. Call of Duty currently does it. I think they'll be all right. It's just because it's COD. It's massive. They have the money to lose if they want to.
COD's just huge. It's
So
They put
gonna
out
die
a new game.
But out of the games we'd go with, I'd go with Rocket League. That's the one I bet.
Yeah.
I'd bet my money on Rocket League.
I could see Rocket League doing that with how it's going so far.
So, have you seen Top Gear before?
Ah.
Top Gear.
That's that.
It's got
Top
three
Gear-
British dudes.
Three British
Yeah, I've
dudes,
seen the
super
TikToks.
famous,
Maybe a few like shows. I've never like followed along religiously.
So they their thing was car football.
Okay.
So they would get a big parking lot. They put cargo containers all around the side.
Okay.
Play
Oh,
car
I remember
football.
this.
And then,
Yeah.
Put the soccer ball.
Put the soccer ball in the
Yeah,
middle,
and then
and
play
they
with
would,
the cars.
they would
Yeah.
take.
I've
Like,
seen the
a couple,
TikTok
you know,
videos of
yeah,
it,
exactly. They'd have like a few Chevy Avids or
Yeah.
whatever, and they would just go around.
Go at it.
And
That would be
it
so
didn't
much
matter.
fun.
Smart cars, whatever. They could.
That
drive
is Rocket
each
League.
other.
We should do that.
Yeah.
We should do. What if would you
Real
be
life car
open to
soccer.
creating real life car soccer, real life Rocket League?
Oh my
Go-kart.
god! Yeah.
That'd be sweet.
Is
With
that, is that possible?
Let's do it on the field.
North lot.
North lot, clear it out, get a few go-karts.
Can you get us some of the sick cars?
I don't think we could crash any
David.
sick
I don't, come on, you're the car. Hey, you got some connections here.
All right, we can do it with our own
Yeah.
cars. I think it's definitely doable. I think
I think that'd be sweet. Honestly,
a 3v3 would be pretty fun.
Would anybody
honestly,
watch
what
that?
if we
I
brought
would.
in, you know, what if we
I
brought
think a
in,
lot of people
well, no,
would.
think about it.
Well,
What if we
watching
brought
a
in 6
freshman just
go-karts?
ran
Okay,
Six
what if we brought
go-karts.
6 go-karts
Yeah.
and
What are you gonna use as
we
a
got
ball,
a
though?
large inflatable ball.
Yeah.
Beach ball.
A beach ball, or a
ball.
yoga ball. Honestly,
Yoga
honestly,
ball.
a yoga ball, and we brought 6 go karts in,
Yeah.
and we just did laps around the lot, and,
Yeah.
and we played a real life, and we
That'd
could
be
live
fun.
stream it for all of our.
I'm down.
That'd be
DCC
great
media.
fun.
3-on-3,
Drive.
6 players.
Drive.
Yeah.
That'd be a great fundraiser. And
That'd be a fantastic
That'd be a-
fundraiser.
We could
Yeah.
bring people out to it. I love it.
Yeah, and we could have people watching.
Yeah.
We can grit, and we're lucky at CC. We have a lot of kids that are good at
I think it's a
go-karting
good-
and like go-karting. So,
I think it's a great idea.
and go-karts are not hard to get. So yeah, that's.
We definitely have to talk about this more.
I think we need to
this.
talk about
Yeah.
this more
Maybe-
after
maybe
we.
propose
Maybe
that.
we should
Yeah.
build a whole Rocket League real life stadium on the new land.
And the North Lot, I'm telling you, North Lot would be the perfect place to do it. We clear it out on a weekend or something, you know?
How do you feel about I know like these plans have been in CC's era for a very long time, but how do you feel about them buying a whole nother lot off campus? It's like just
150
2 miles-
acres,
150
right?
acres,
Nice.
2 miles down the road just to build another
Uh-huh.
stadium area. How do you feel about that?
From a business perspective, it makes sense to have your money in land over in the bank. So from an land is not always the most liquid thing, right? So it's sometimes hard to sell. But you're a big school, you have the capital, why not prepare? You know, if this campus does get too small for us, why not prepare for the next 100 years, right? It's 2 miles down. It's 2 miles down the road, and it's on 12 Mile, which is like not really even used. So it's like almost like on the same road.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's a great lot. So I'm feeling pretty good about that.
And with all the neighborhood developments too that are going up around CC right
the
now,
value of
the value of that property is going to skyrocket. And even in the next 5 years.
So
even of the surrounding properties, because families are going to want to buy a house that's close to us.
Oh yeah, I remember like, we were looking at the houses like next to here, like in the neighborhood,
like
crazy.
Well, it's actually like they build each other up. Like CC's building a new STEM. Those houses start going up. You know,
it's honestly it's no secret why the city of Novi have like half of their executive leadership team at our Say the School address because we're controlling now super big growth in their city. Tax revenue is going to go up. People will be moving here, right? So.
I do have another question. Do you think, because I know robotics, like that whole STEM center, like we mentioned earlier, was like that STEM center was for the robotics team, pretty much almost. Do you bet at some point that the esports team or the esports club or will get their own center at some point? Like maybe.
I think
maybe like a lab.
I'll take a hot take, but I'll say sooner rather than later.
Okay.
We'll have something for esports at the school, I think.
Right.
So I know we're going to move into the STEM building, into a nice facility, but I think there might be something that can maybe cooperative too, not just for esports. That seems a little bit selfish, but like, right? I could see something that we could use along with other sports, right?
Yeah.
So one question I also had, like regarding 26 Rising, where does the name come from?
Oh, cool! This is my favorite part. I helped name it, and so did someone else from CC actually. Alumnus I graduated with in 18, Kenny Andreziak, so I'll give him a shout out. Basically, we were coming together with names for this idea, this company. I knew I wanted it to be based out of Michigan. We were really struggling. I mean, I came through like 200 names. I was like, that sucks, that's terrible. We're reading through the names and I'm cringing. I'm like, oh, that's just...
Sometimes names is the hardest part.
ChatGPT like listed 20 names.
ChatGPT wasn't a thing.
And this is before chat. If I had chat, it probably would have spit this out. But basically, it was like Michigan's a 26 state. Okay. So that's where the 26 comes from. Right. And then I chose Rising as like that's the kind of the spirit of Detroit, right? Detroit's coming back. I mean, and honestly, since we named it, it's kind of been it's kind of been powerful. It's like Lions are starting to get good. I'm like, all right, this is a good name.
It's all on you, man. It's all on you, right?
Let's keep the Lions chatter down.
With that, thank you very much for joining us. You know, Coach Stephen, we really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. Honestly, this is the most fun I've had. So. This was a blast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Love to have you back.
Love to have you back too.
Yeah.
All right.
See you on the next episode, folks.
See you guys.
See you.
Peace out.
Thank you, Coach Steve.
Thanks. We gotta go.